Assalamualaikum. Waalaikumsalam.
We are 6 Muslim women from different generations, professionals, moms, married and single, some born, some converted, and we have a story to tell.
That's a reality.
From our home to yours,
Listen,
this is The Bag.
I could be the most standoffish person sitting in the back of the room.
He's choosing Shaitan. Christians or the Muslim or the Jewish folk.
Yeah, I don't view it as black and white.
Guide me to the truth.
I think that's the next move.
رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي.
My Lord, expand for me my breast with assurance, and ease for me my task, and untie the knot from my tongue, that they may understand my speech.
Welcome everyone to The Bag Live, Real Talk by Real Muslim Women. My name is Habiba and I'll be your host today. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Dean Screen, and subscribe to our website, thebaglive.com, for regular updates. We are also on Facebook at The Bag Live. As we discuss this subject, we definitely want to hear from you, so please comment your questions, thoughts, and concerns. This week, our subject is about polygamy. 4, 3, 2, or 1, polygamy. That's what we're talking about today. So let's get into it. Polygamy is an ancient practice. However, we kind of want to explore whether or not the practice of polygamy is still relevant in the 21st century, especially when it comes to Muslims living in the West. By the way, polygamy is the practice of either gender marrying multiple partners of the opposite gender, while polygyny is specifically men marrying multiple women. So, to start off this conversation, I would like to play this clip by Sister Amina, who speaks about polygamy.
We have this mixed up idea that polygamy belongs to the man, that this is a gift to the man in some way. Think about it. What does a man gain by having more than one wife? You got it, boy. This brother responded quickly. Seriously, we know that the man is 100% financially responsibility. You know, he's got to cover everything, right? You ever tried to take care of one wife? Man, to try to afford 2 or 3 or 4 and still be just between them, this would not be an easy matter. And remember that little issue of just? It's hard to be just with one wife. And you want to multiply that? And then think about it. Along with every wife, you get what? A mother-in-law. That'll make you think. You forget about that when you're thinking about just getting a wife, but another mother-in-law? Oh my. So now what is a man getting? Oh, definitely headaches, a drained out pocketbook, and always this terror of answering to Allah on the day of judgment? Oh my, a man has not gained anything by polygamy. It wasn't designed to meet the needs of the man. Polygamy came as a gift to the woman. It is the woman who benefits from polygamy. It is the woman who gains from polygamy. But we've lost track of the understanding of that because it's been presented backwards, that it was something for men.
So, as we know, the Prophet ﷺ had 9 wives. However, Muslim men were sanctioned to be able to have no more than 4 wives. However, current societal trends makes me wonder if it's equitable for men to be able to have multiple women. So, Leslie, I want to ask you this question. According to Western feminist theory philosophy, polygamy is beneficial more for the women in its ideal form than it is for men. So do you think that is true? Is it ethical in Western societies when it comes to Western society for men to be able to marry multiple women?
I think it depends on the polygynous setup, as it were, right? So the feminist perspective, some feminists believe that polygyny works for women because it allows women to have it all, right? So that whereas some women who are in monogamous marriages, the idea is that we can't have kids and a career and, you know, this, that, and the other. Whereas polygyny, you know, sort of provides that for women. I think that some of the arguments that I've read is that, for example, if a wife doesn't feel in the mood to, you know, engage sexually with her husband, it's not something that she needs to worry about. Whereas, you know, some of the folks who argue on behalf of polygyny will say in monogamous relationships, wives end up, you know, engaging in sex when they don't really want to. I'm not sure sort of how I feel about that, but I think that part of the feminist perspective on polygyny lies outside of religiosity. Okay, so that there are secular polyamory and polygamy and polygyny, right? And so what a lot of Muslims, I think, don't want to really talk about is that, in fact, what might get polygamy or polygyny legal in the United States is the advocacy of queer folks who are in polyamorous relationships, right? They're the ones who are really pushing things forward on this in terms of this agenda. So when we're thinking about this, you know, I think that Muslims have to be thinking about, you know, how they're voting and different things in terms of, you know, there are some Muslims who take a very conservative tact and say anything that has to do with LGBTQ folks, I'm not going to have anything to do with it. But in fact, in this instance, this group might be the, you know, way for people who are in polygynous relationships to sort of legalize things. And, you know, as a, you know, from my own perspective, I think that people should be able to, if they want to, and if everyone is on board, have more than one spouse. If that's something that, I mean, I don't think that the government should have anything to really say about that, right? But I think that because of taxes and different issues like that, it makes things pretty difficult, you know, in terms of the legal aspects.
Healthcare, insurance, all of that.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you know, polygyny is like the clip said, right? It's something that can definitely have a positive effect, right? It's down to how it's managed, you know, and who's in the relationship, right? If you've got, like, you know, the sister said, men are responsible financially, right? So if a man is not able to financially maintain his first wife, then you know, is polygyny something that you as a woman should be accepting from him? Because a man can't practice polygyny unless a woman is agreeing to it. And a lot of times, unfortunately, what happens is you have men who they cannot afford to take on this second person or this third person or this fourth person. And what that woman is actually doing is conceding her rights of maintenance in order to be in that relationship. That's a destructive form of polygyny. Do you know what I mean? Right? A woman needs to be able to, if you're going to be in that relationship, then it should be something that is beneficial to you. And there are women who have beneficial polygamous relationships.
I also want to just point out, Habiba, you kind of like touched on it a little bit about the difference of polygamy and all that stuff, but polygamy is really the umbrella term. And then under polygamy is polyandry and polygyny. So polygyny is when, you know, one man has multiple wives. Polyandry is when one woman has multiple husbands. Now, then you get into polyamory, and that's what a lot of people who are not Muslim are practicing too, where it's not just this one person can have all these multiple people. It's all three or all four or however many people, I don't know, usually like 3 or 4, I guess. All of them are in a relationship with each other. And so it really does depend on how you do things. So we can't sit up here and say what's right or wrong, because literally every single relationship, including all of these polygamous and polyamorous relationships, monogamous relationships, they all have their individual quirks, you know? But I do agree with Leslie. The queer community is the one who's making a path for this to become legal for people who want to practice polygamy. But I don't think that the government should have any say in our personal lives.
That's an interesting point, and I also think about this question a lot myself about sisters who are considered less desirable in the community, right? Someone else made the point that, like, there are a lot of sisters who are less desirable, who don't have many options, and that polygyny is a way for them to be able to have like a spouse, and sometimes that does require them to relinquish some of their rights, right? But anyway, moving on, because I'm a poet, I wanted to share this poem actually, called Ishq and Akhlaq, Where Were We? It says, Wahhabi Dai seeks another wife, matter she who gives unto he. What of 1, 2, or 3, 4, or 5 more wives of thee? None satisfy his needs so vast, easy to marry, easy to divorce. Talak, 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 goes he. Ishq and Akhlaq, where were we? And this is a poem by Paul Saladin Armstrong. And I thought this was a really interesting poem, because when we hear about like polygyny, sometimes it can be destructive to communities when like men are just like marrying, multiple women at a time, and just like doing it almost like it's a game in some communities, right? And so we hear about a lot of secret marriages happening in our communities. So this leads me to my next question. Sister Kala, do men need permission to marry another woman? Does he have to inform the woman that he's marrying, that he's currently married? And do you think that people should speak up when they see this happening in their communities?
I mean, okay, so there's like a million. That is so multifaceted, that question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, does a man need permission to marry another woman? No, he doesn't, right? But is it a smart thing to do? It is. I mean, if you want to have a productive relationship, right, it's really nonsensical for a man to enter into another relationship with another woman without the woman in his present relationship being on board, right? So men do it. And generally, when guys do things like that, it doesn't really work out very well, right? Because you didn't give anyone a choice. Secret marriages, that's something. Who is the secret being held from? Is the secret being held from the first wife? Is the secret being held from the second wife? Because the person who's marrying into the relationship should have a choice, right? You should be making an informed decision as to whether or not you want to be in a multiple people relationship in polygyny. And again, going back to what I said a little while ago, for the man, if you want all of your relationships to work, then transparency and honesty is the first and foremost thing. If you go and you marry somebody, you go to the masjid for Maghrib and you come home with a wife and she don't see you for 3 days because you're on your honeymoon, then you come back and let her know, oh yeah, by the way, I just got married. You've not only that, you've started down a destructive path. Right? Because how is she supposed to accept something which is going to be difficult for her to accept anyway? But you did it without any consultation to her. You didn't give her any kind of time to emotionally prep for the situation. So my personal opinion is, if you want to go down that road, do it the right way. There's a right way and there's a wrong way to do polygyny. And the right way is what Allah loves. Not, in my opinion, not just throwing it on someone. And what I've seen in my experience is people who do that, one of them falls off, right? Either the first one leaves or the second one leaves, but it doesn't last.
Or both.
Both.
It's a breach of trust. It's a
exactly
trust, and the relationship is supposed to be built on trust and honesty and consideration for each other's feelings. If you're going ahead and doing your thing, and keep in mind that clip that we just watched with Sister Amina, she said it right. The responsibility of somebody who's going to, as a Muslim, let's put it like that, as a Muslim, the man is totally responsible for each woman and each woman's needs, and he needs to live according to that. And so, having a secret breaks that trust. And
the other thing about secret marriages, right, is I personally know someone who was in a secret marriage. Okay, so I don't know whether they necessarily knew that it was a secret marriage, but that's what happened. Then there's a child that comes out of that secret marriage. Now the child is a secret, okay? Because if the marriage is a secret, you definitely can't tell them about a child. So how is that fair on that child? How is that justice on that child? That's not what Islam purports. So, you know,
also this secret marriage thing, it kind of, I guess it puts me off when we're talking about it in relation to Islam, because it's like these Muslim brothers out here, they are so gung-ho about polygamy, but then they go about it in the way of a non-Muslim man just cheating out here. Like, there's no respect for the relationship. There's no respect for your current spouse. So if you're not going to follow the rules of Islam, then you might as well just be out here cheating like any other man out here.
And I mean, I have, you know, experienced people who women who have actually, you know, participated in looking in the search for the second wife, right? You know, because they were consulted, you know, and they might have had to go through an emotional something in the beginning, but, you know, afterwards they were on board and they participated because this person is coming into their family, right? So they participated in the interview or whatever you want to call it. So, you know, it's how you go about it. And I think that we as women, we control how he goes about it, because why are we saying yes to a secret marriage? Why are we saying yes to somebody who can't afford to look after us? He can't afford to. If you can't afford to maintain me fully, then why am I going to say yes to you? So
what some of these men are doing is committing fraud, right? So just to clarify legally, bigamy means being illegally married to more than one person. Okay, that's illegal in most of the West, certainly in the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, where a lot of men want to practice polygyny rather. But what happens is that a lot of men, while it's their responsibility to take care of all these wives, what they do is they're legally married to one, and then they're Islamically married to the others, and they have the others collect public assistance and other types of things under the guise of, I don't have a husband, but I've got kids.
We're going to get into that.
That's how a lot of men in different, and it's not just Islam, it's, you know, some sects of Mormonism, it's some Afrocentric religions, there's various religious traditions that practice polygyny, but this is what's been happening a lot in the West, where, you know, they're legally married to one woman and then they're collecting money from the other women, right? And instead of taking on their responsibility, which is to financially support everyone that's involved in the relationship.
And again, that's the thing that I'm saying, that as women, we're the ones that should not be accepting that, right? No, I'm not going to go and claim public assistance. You know, you need to do what you're supposed to do. It's your responsibility to look after me. Why should I go to the government and lie?
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, I do want to challenge the idea that, like, we don't have a say in it at all. I think when you marry someone, a part of the logic of like men thinking that they can just go off and marry another woman has to do with the fact that men don't think that they need to consult their wife. And so for me, if a wife is uncomfortable and she expresses like, I do not agree with this, she should not be gaslit into being coerced into that decision. Because I see that too. Like, come on, like, it's my right. Like, why don't you want me to be happy? And it becomes a thing.
Sorry.
Look at, I like what Zakiya Witherspoon said, right? If we can just put that comment up, you know, basically what she said is that women determine the success of the marriage, right? So if
that's true,
why would you do something deceitful behind her back and bring another woman into it? Then all you're going to do is those two women are going to be fighting with each other. You're going to have total animosity. And you as a man, there's no comfort in that, because you're going to go from one headache to another headache. Like, all you're doing is just walking around having headaches. I don't see the happiness and the benefit.
But he's sexually satisfied though, so it don't matter. That's really what it comes down to. And also what you said, Sister Khalida, about why are women saying yes to this? If you like, I'm not speaking for all women, of course, but there are a lot of converts who come into Islam who have dealt with cheating men who made them feel like they had no choice but to be in a relationship with them and accept other women. And
Right.
so Islam makes it more beneficial for them because they have rights that this man is supposed to be following. And if he's a good Muslim man, then you shouldn't have to worry. And so as long as you can accept these other women, which you've already done before without the benefits, then with the benefits, there's no issue. So yes, people are saying yes. And there are benefits to polygamy.
I've heard all of you talking about, what's wrong, what's right, is trust in this, but I haven't heard anybody talk about marriage contracts. My whole thing is if you put it in your marriage contract that, hey, you can't marry another wife, that's it, that's all, because that's what marriage is. It's a contract. It's an agreement between two people. And if I put in my marriage contract, and that's what a lot of these brothers who are born Muslim or who know about Islam or who are getting these other women, they don't know about a marriage contract. They don't know their rights as a wife. That you can put in your marriage contract things that you are okay with dealing with and things that you're like, hey, bottom line, you do this, I'm out the door.
Folks are out in the streets with no contract. Folks are out in the streets with no contract.
With no
Many
contract.
women, I've personally known several women who have gotten married with no contract whatsoever.
Don't even know what you're talking about.
But even with the contract, people are breaking it. Men are breaking it.
What?
I'm sorry.
I said men are breaking those contracts. So, I mean, like, honestly, sometimes that doesn't always help you in that situation either.
But then women are not following through with their consequences.
I was going to say that in terms of those who do it without a contract, they usually don't go to an imam. That's one of those fly-by-night weddings where, or marriages, I shouldn't call it a wedding, where in the parking lot. And a brother said, okay, let's marry you, boom, 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 everything is straight. And, they walk away. But if they go to an imam, they're going to have a contract and a whole lot of other things too.
And the other thing that I just want to say, right, is that in a marriage contract, you can say that we're not going to do polygyny, right? But my understanding, when I studied, right, you can say if you get married to someone else, then you have to pay me $20,000, right? But you can't actually. But I mean, you can say you can't take another wife. But in terms of the legality, the Islamic legality of it is, my understanding is that's actually, it doesn't stand because you're trying to make something impermissible that Allah has made permissible. But you can definitely say, I do not want to be in a polygynous relationship. And if you choose to do that, then I would like this or I would like that.
Or
I actually don't agree with that.
Divorce me and marry her, because that's another thing, another choice.
Sure. But I don't agree with that because I think like we have to take in consideration like ethics into this. And there are actually Muslim scholars who like forbid like the practice of polygamy. They see that as actually causing a lot of harm and destruction to a lot of families. I know there's an imam in Canada who says do not partake in it because it's causing a lot more harm than it is benefits in that particular community. So I don't agree with that, but I want to move on. This has been on the internet for like the past couple of weeks. I've been seeing it's kind of about secondwife.com, which is a matrimonial service for practicing Muslims launched by someone named Azad Chawala, a business YouTuber. So this next clip is from an interview that he did with the BBC. So Rob, can you please play that?
So have you met women who are willing to be a second wife?
Yes, thousands. We have them.
British Muslim women?
Yes, our website is most popular in the UK.
Tell me, why do you feel the need? I mean, could any of your wives have 2 or 3 husbands?
Not my wives. That won't be something that's acceptable to me. But if there's a woman out there who wants to, feels like, hey, I want to have them, I'm not going to preach against it.
My understanding of the reason, the Islamic context for multiple wives, was at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, there were multiple wars and men were going off to fight wars and they were dying, which left many widows. And a widow's lot was a very difficult lot at that time. Therefore, men were encouraged to take on multiple wives in order to stop those wives and their children from becoming destitute. If that is the case, then you have no justification whatsoever contextually for having more than one wife, do you?
A lot of Muslims actually use that excuse. I wouldn't call it excuse, they give that reasoning. There are many other reasons to actually take multiple wives. I mean, men's sexuality is kind of out of control at the moment. in terms of every society. What this does is it actually keeps it in check and balance. It's more of an honorable relationship as opposed to having a one-night stand, or people just have mistresses on the side, and it's quite common. I mean, 50% of all marriages.
I don't have a mistress.
I mean,
you don't have a mistress.
No.
No. And you have one wife.
Yes.
And how long have you been married to her?
10 years.
10 years. So in that 10 years, how many affairs have you had?
0.
So then you've proved that you don't need another wife.
I do need it, but I'm just maybe somebody who's actually got control.
No, because one of the reasons you've just given is your sexual energy is such, your sexual prowess is such, that without having a second wife, that one wife can't possibly satisfy you.
I mean,
how does that make her feel, do you think?
Sexual desires are just one thing. I mean, females are not naturally as sexual as men. They're more emotional.
Have you said part of the reason I want another wife is because you alone won't be able to satisfy me sexually? Have you said that to your wife?
I wouldn't say that to her because it would hurt her feelings. A lot of things.
But you said on national radio.
Yeah. But
so now she knows that.
I didn't say that to her, particularly about myself. I'm just arguing.
But you said that was one of the reasons for polygamy.
For a lot of people, it is.
But not for you.
I'm not going to deny it or say yes or no.
That was a mess.
What? That was real. That was real.
That is real.
That was real.
Like that.
That's how, yeah.
That made
That
no
confusing way of thinking.
I mean, the thing is, right, that...
Thank you, Mika.
Thank you, Mika.
Right. You know, like, there are women who have more sex drive than their husbands.
Yep.
Right. There are women who are sexually miserable in their relationship because their husband is not satisfying their sexual need. Right. So to bring polygyny to bring, and yes, it's their responsibility to control it, right? To bring polygyny down to an issue of I want more sex, I think is really taken away from the legitimacy of polygynous relationships.
It's
right?
barbaric.
If you look at who the Prophet Muhammad SAW married, right? He didn't go out and marry raunchy women, right? He didn't have 9 real sexy women, right? In fact, he was married to women who didn't even want to have sex, right? Because he was married to Salama, and Salama she gave up her nights to Aisha, right? His reasoning for marrying different women was more strategic, religious, financial, political, social, right? Those are the reasons why I believe that polygyny is relevant today, right? There are a lot of women who would like to be in a relationship with a decent man, because let's face it, there's a lot of
garbage men. There's a shortage of good men,
right? We want to be married to BMWs, right? We don't want to be married to,
I think what's framed my view on this, on polygyny today, is that men who are from Muslim majority countries across the board pretty much reject it. Okay, it's a thing that Western men are into. But when I did online dating, which turned into a social science project for me, so I literally had conversations with like 200 men. And one of the questions on the original questionnaire was, would you be in a polygamous relationship, or are you open to it? 98% of the men said no. Okay, the ones that said yes were all from Western countries. The ones that said no were all from Muslim majority countries. And so I asked all of them, why would you not do this? There were 3 main answers that stood out to me. The first was only really villainous men in my country do that. Okay, they used other terms, but it's Ramadan, so I'm not going to use any curse words, right? The second was a person from Pakistan said to me, and several other people echoed that, we don't do that. My father told me that we don't do that because it hurts women. Okay, that was just that across the board. And the third was the one that I felt was most interesting and provocative, which is, I'm not going to risk my afterlife to just be able to have more than one wife, because the opportunity, the idea that I might be able to treat, 2 or more women equally is such a hard thing that I'm afraid that I might go to Jahannam because of it. And I'm not putting my afterlife in jeopardy so that I can have more than one woman. Okay. And so, listening to that really framed my views on modern day polygyny, right? The fact that in Muslim majority countries where people can do it legally, most are not.
And also, I would
like to say something.
To Mr. Khalida's point about or not Sister Khaled is, sorry, in the video, how he said, you know, having multiple marriages is for the men's sexual desires. Like, what a lot of people don't realize is that our boys are not being taught how to discipline themselves from an early age. They're not being taught how to control those feelings, and it is possible. So they don't have to be out here running rampant and they can't control the D, you know, like that's just not how it has to be. So I think that society is enabling our men, and they're causing harm to both of us, men and women, by allowing them to just keep on going this way without any repercussions at all.
So, Kareem, I know you wanted to say something, so I'd like you to go ahead and say what you wanted to say, and then I'd like to come in.
Okay. So there's the question of whether or not men, you know, should follow their sexual desires and therefore get married. I want to start by saying that Allah gave us that command in the Quran that a man can have 4, 3, or 2 or 1, and it's better to have 1. And he explains why. In terms of why it's better to have 1, because you have to be fair to each one. But it is a permission it's an eternal permission. So for people to say, oh, well, you know, they were having wars and this is why they did it and everything, you know, that is true. That's true for that time, but then that wasn't the only thing that was true. And, you know, today, no, we're not having wars, but we do have a shortage of men, good men. You know, and everybody knows that, you know, because there's a lot of women who are not married at all.
And, you know,
but let me just say this. So in terms of, you know, men following their sexual desire, men are doing that. Men are doing that all over the world. And one of the things that they said in the clip is that people are having mistresses, or they're just having one night stands, or they're doing all kinds of things. But Allah gave us a legal way for a man to express that need, you know, in a way that, number one, he's responsible. He has to be responsible for all the women that he's involved with. He has to be fair. He has to, and he has to, that whole thing about sex is sacred. It's sacred. Just like Khalid was saying, children come out of it. And those children need to be respected. And each man who desires to have a woman and wants to take care of that whole family, you know, and make sure that the whole family is okay, and everybody, all the children's needs are met and all the women's needs are met, you know, this man, and he made those choices because of sex or whatever the choices were. You know, we don't need to, you know, question their choices. We need to question the way they treat the people.
Hold on a second. I just wanted to say, there was a question that was popped up by, I think her name was Amy or something like that. And she said, what reason would a woman want to be in a polygynous relationship? Right now, there are women who may have children for another man, right? And, you know, maybe they're not with that man for whatever reason, divorce, death, whatever reason, they are single. They're a single parent, right? And they may want to be in a polygynous relationship so that they have that alone time with their own children, as well as having the benefit of a relationship. There are some women who don't want to see a man every day. They have their lives. They might be professionals. They might just be people who they might even be asexual. They might have a million reasons why they do not necessarily want to have a man in their life 7 days a week, right? And so for them, a polygynous relationship works. However, just because they are agreeing to polygyny, that doesn't mean that they want to be in a relationship where they don't get their rights, you know?
I think this is interesting, and I do want to kind of pop in and ask a question, because based on what Kareem has mentioned, it's almost implying that only men of a certain income deserve to have like this, a certain income bracket deserve to have sexual pleasure. So the men who don't make enough money, like they don't have the right to have their sexual needs met. Is that not also relevant to this
Look at
conversation.
Hudayfa. She put a comment up there, right? I just want to she's saying that her friend asked her to marry her husband, who she was married to for 15 years, and the reason why she wanted her husband to have another wife is because she couldn't have children. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there are valid, reasonable reasons that don't have anything to do with sex as to why people are in polygynous relationships. And I personally know of many women who are in very functional, good polygynous relationships where their husbands are earning enough money to maintain all of his wives and everybody's happy, joy. Does that mean that there's not, some tension here or some tension there? Yes, of course there's, because it's relationships, right? And in relationships, you have those things. In Jamaica, we say teeth and tongue must have to meet, right? Like if you got your tongue inside your mouth, at some point you're gonna bite it, right? So you expect there to be some kind of something, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Now, you don't think that's like an exceptional case? Because honestly, how many women are out here really looking for a wife for their husbands? And I feel like
there's more than you think.
You're getting into a different age bracket. You're getting into people who have kids already. You're getting into a lot of a population that's actually, they're okay with this. The population that's struggling the most with this is the younger population who don't have kids already, who are just dealing with a bunch of men.
So then why are they agreeing to it? Then why are they saying yes?
They're traumatized.
Nobody's forcing
messed up.
Well, women have to learn how to say no. I'm not going to accept that.
I want to ask something. Why does everybody think that having more sex leads to sexual satisfaction?
Having more sex does not lead to more sexual satisfaction.
Exactly my point. So why does everybody thinking that more than one wife, I have more than one wife, I'm sexually satisfied? That doesn't mean that.
Right.
You can have one wife as long as y'all are clicking sexually in the bedroom, you're satisfied. But if you have 2, 3 wives, if y'all not clicking in the bedroom, it doesn't matter how many wives you have or how many times you're doing it. You're not going to satisfy yourself. She's not getting satisfied. Nobody's getting satisfied. So the quantity doesn't mean satisfaction.
I want to defend men a little bit.
And I did want to say, those who are, not satisfied. So men who are not satisfying their wives, yet they're getting another wife. They need to learn how to do that, because it isn't something that they necessarily automatically know. A woman is different. Her physiology.
I just know Habiba brought up the comment about a guy, if he's not financially, if he's not at a financial status, he doesn't have the right to have sexual satisfaction. So I'm like, well, one really doesn't have to do with the other, but when you do marry somebody, you do take on, men do take on their responsibility. So if you're taking on their women's responsibility, yes, your financial status has to be at a certain point, because how are you going to take care of me, her, and the next one if you can't take care of yourself?
And the kids that come out of this relationship.
Or if she already has kids and you marry her, you still you take on their financial responsibility now too. That's your family.
Mm-hmm. There's a hadith about, and I can't quote it, but this is the gist of it. There was a man during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who got married, and he was poor, and he got married, and he was still poor, and he spoke to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and explained this situation, and the Prophet said, well, marry a second wife. So he married a second wife, and matters were even worse. They, the finance was just not working. And so then he spoke to the Prophet, and the Prophet said, well, marry a third wife. He married the third wife, and the third wife had a skill. I don't remember what it was, but whatever it was something that she taught everybody, and he was able to sell, and they financially were able to be successful. So, that speaks to, well, does it have to be that the man is, financially well off? And
I know some women who agree with that, and their mindset is we're building an empire. I'm here, she's making money. This other woman, she's here making money. We're all making money. He's making money. Let's build this empire together.
You could getting married to them, though. I mean, like, honestly, I don't understand why you have to get married to a second and third wife
because it's sexual now. It's sexual.
But it doesn't have to be sexual. And just
that's
because
what I'm saying.
Marrying people doesn't mean that marriage automatically means that you're having sex.
I don't. I mean, I just
a
don't.
marriage is a partnership, and you marry for different reasons.
I just don't accept that all polygynous relationships are based on sex. I think that there
me
are a
neither.
lot of. I think that right now we have a lot of dusty men who are going out and marrying multiple women's, right?
And they're tainting it.
As that's, to me, that's my responsibility to make sure that if an ashy man comes my way, I'm not trying to get involved with you because you're ashy. You
Well, you
understand?
know what? But I do want to say, you know, regarding a woman can just say she doesn't accept it. If you don't put in your marriage contract that you can initiate a divorce, some Islamic rulings will hold it to only the man can initiate a divorce.
Right.
So he can come home and say, I'm bringing another woman into this relationship and you can't divorce me. Okay.
That's
not true.
That's not true.
No,
That's not true because a woman can't initiate a
I will
divorce.
say,
No, there are some women.
And then she has to give back the dowry, but that's another
Right,
subject.
yeah.
This is why men need to be honest from the beginning, because if you said that from the beginning, she wouldn't have even been in that situation in the first place. And Sister Khaled already brought this up. You need to be giving your women choices. It's not fair to not have the choice to be put in this situation in the first place, because it does entail a lot of hardship for the women. It does entail a lot of emotional hardship. And for a man to just completely disregard that and be like, nah, you gotta check your jealousy. I'll never have to check my jealousy because I know there's no possibility of you getting a second husband. I won't accept that in any way, shape, or form. But you have to check your jealousy. And there's a hadith to support that, right? So they'll throw that in your face too.
And exactly. And that comes from men being the authority or head of households. They think that they don't have to consult their wives. But I want to move on to the next question. Zora, you kind of touched on this. Polygamy is illegal in all 50 states in America. And according to
it's legal in Somerville, Massachusetts. I think we saw that.
I think it's bigamy that's illegal. I'm not sure that they use the term polygamy in the legal statute.
Bigamy.
I'm not sure.
And what about Utah? Utah with the Mormons?
It's
It's
actually
still illegal
not allowed there.
It's still illegal.
Sorry. What was the question?
The question is, so according to Sharia law, we're told to follow the laws of the land that we live in. So I'm curious whether or not you think that the government should be involved in our marriages and our personal lives and legally offer protection to women. And should we legalize polygamy? I think I've witnessed a lot of communities, well, I'll say Salafi communities in particular, like be against like protesting and voting even. So like it's ironic to me that they then will like try to skirt around the law at the same time, but they don't want to protest or like vote for certain policies to be put in place in the same token. So do you think that the government should be involved in our personal lives when it comes to marriage? Or should we follow Sharia law?
I have a lot of thoughts, but the simple answer is no, heck no. The government should not have no say in my personal life, not my sex life, not my married life, not none of it. Okay. So honestly, that is just no. No.
So when it comes to healthcare, the government shouldn't give free healthcare.
What did you say, Kareem?
I said that in terms of their involvement with other people's lives, their personal lives, just like Habiba was alluding to or about to say, it comes down to, well, what about healthcare? What about,
they have too much sway over those things already.
And things like that. These
Social
things,
security.
Yeah, Social Security.
I was going to say with that, I want to say Leslie touched on it earlier, but I can't remember who. But you spoke on the first wife is the legal wife. She is the one who is legally in the U.S. legally married to him. Every other wife usually is basically it's a Muslim marriage. So then when you start having kids and sometimes, and I know in a lot of Muslim families, sometimes their paperwork isn't together. So what happens when this father who has taken on financial responsibility for all these children with different wives, now when he passes away, you didn't handle your financial responsibility. Now your first wife is the only legal wife that you have and only her children. What happens to those other wives and those other children?
Right.
Now you've left them out to dry. You've left them kind of,
but then
SOL.
But then that doesn't necessarily have to be that way if you have a will. I know of a sister who lost her husband quite recently, actually, and she was in a polygynous relationship, right? And that man was a good man, and he handled his business. And when he died, both of his wives were set, because he was very cognizant of what his responsibility is to his wives. And so even though only one was legal and the other one was a quote unquote Muslim marriage, right? When I say legal and Muslim, right? But again, it's down to the person that you marry. Who is this man? What is his morality? Where does his moral compass point to? You can't marry a man that is morally bereft and then expect that your rights.
Not even saying that he's morally bereft. Maybe a tragedy happens and he didn't get around to doing his paperwork. Sometimes people put things off. They don't want to think about death. They don't want to think about the inevitable and have to sit down and write, their beneficiaries out. Sometimes that's hard for people. So what if this, somebody in their 30s? They're not expecting that they're going to pass away soon. They're not seeing that in the forefront.
Whether you're 30, whether you're 3, or whether you're 30, you should have
what we should do and what we do are two different things.
But then I would say this, right? Let me say this.
Our intentions.
If I was in a polygynous relationship, and I was the legal wife, and my husband had another wife and he died, then I know the Sharia. I know that by rights, regardless of what the law of this land says, Allah says, I'm entitled to this amount, she's entitled to that amount, and the children are entitled to that amount, right? The Sharia is very clear on inheritance. So even though I might get all of the money and everything else, then it's between me and Allah, right? If I choose to keep all of that money for myself, then that's hellfire that I'm eating for myself. Because at some point, fear of Allah has to come into our relationships.
But as Habiba asked about Sharia law says we need to follow the laws of the land. Okay, so if something is not fard, so for example, if Joe Biden said Muslims can't pray 5 times a day anymore, we are to break that law because praying is fard.
The law of the land.
But something that is not fard, okay, something that is not a requirement of our religion, which polygyny is not a requirement. It's an option, but it's not a requirement. How do we then understand not following the laws of our land under Sharia law?
But bigamy is what is illegal, right? Like you said, bigamy is illegal. Polygyny is not. Right? He's not taking 2 wives down to the courthouse and marrying 2 wives legally, right? So therefore he cannot be found guilty of bigamy.
Because he can't, right. And
exactly.
What happens, like I said,
so therefore he is following the law of the land, right? He's found a way around. And again, understand what I'm saying. On the one hand, I do believe that polygamy is being abused in our society. There are way too many dusty, ashy brothers who are marrying good sisters and ruining their lives under the guise of polygyny, right? And what they have done is they have taken an honorable, respectful, and good thing, and they've just trampled it in the dust, right? Now, to me, the way that we manage that is that we have to, as women, we have to not accept less, right? I have the responsibility that if a brother comes to me and wants to marry me, well, who are you? Where do you come from? Who's your family? Do you have a wife? Do you have children? That's my responsibility to know who I'm marrying. You can't marry an ashy brother and then get vexed because he handled you wrong because you married an ashy brother.
Well, they don't always come off like they're ashy in the first place. And the second thing is, what if I'm the first wife? I've got 11 kids, and my husband comes home and says, I'm going to bring another wife. And there's no way financially, I've never worked. Okay, there's no way financially for me to leave that relationship. Okay, I can't just divorce. So I don't think it's putting it all on the woman and saying, you just need to not accept it is not taking a lot of
even as the first wife, right? It's not on you, the first wife, but there's a second wife, right? So why is that second wife gonna marry a man with 50 million kids?
Her situation might be worse than that.
She might not know too.
And her situation might be even worse that she's coming from.
Well, you see, that's where the problem lies, right? because like if he's gonna be able to do something for her, then fine. But if you can't do nothing for her, if you're gonna tell her that she's got to go down to the welfare office and lie every time she has a kid, she's got to talk about, I don't have a baby daddy, right? When she's got a husband, now she's got 10 kids and she's telling them she's on her own, but every year she's going down there and getting more welfare. You think people aren't looking at that and saying, what's going on? They know that that's just bringing down the honor in Islam.
That's a good point. Also, Nancy, excellent point. What about the imams who are performing these marriages? It's possible the imams don't know. It's possible men are like skirting around the imams and like going to different imams. Yeah, exactly.
They're not like getting to know the people in the masjid, who they are agreeing to marry like this. Like, you should know something.
Yeah, and
why are you marrying a stranger?
Well, because we can't be friends in Islam.
Right. You can't
not
date.
Being friends in Islam.
Yeah.
But that's another. I want to move on to our last point. It's interesting because we talked about the lack of quality men, right? Which I don't understand why people get so vexed when we say men are trash. We're clearly talking about the system. But we said on the show that
not all men are trash.
Right. Right. So I want to bring up the point of there are different places in the world, Nigeria, India, China, that women actually marry multiple women because there's a shortage of
multiple
marriageable husbands,
multiple
right?
men. Yeah.
Exactly. So and also even Kareem mentioned that there's still an imbalance in a lot of communities, right? Especially, let me say this first, women represent 50% of the population if you look up most population stats, right? But in some communities, right, where like things like mass incarceration exist, and wars, for example, there is a reduction of men, right? On the flip side, though, there are more men that are becoming infertile, right? I actually looked up that statistic a while ago. So would it make sense that women then should be able to have multiple husbands, especially considering that like now we have like DNA testing, we have paternity.
Did you see the race on the statistics? Because I'm just saying, did you see the race on the statistics of which race is actually losing their fertility?
It just said American men. I coughed this up. It's probably the diet, really.
I was going to say probably the food in the water,
Yeah, right. There's a lot of
GMOs.
Right. So, Asma, do you think it would make sense for we to explore the idea, given the context of why even Muslim men were told they would be able to have multiple wives, according to the Prophet, right? Like how they said in the interview. Do you think it would make sense for us to explore, talk about like women being in that position?
Me personally, I don't. I feel like there's so much conflict with men marrying more than one wife, and then if we try to introduce women marrying more than one husband, I think that's just opening up a can of worms that we haven't really learned to understand and address accordingly with one sect. I just feel like, not taking away from women, because hey, look, if you want to, rock your boat, but me personally, the whole polygamy, just because of all the conflicts that come into it, not anybody's sexual desires, or if you're financially able to, it's just everything that comes with kids involved and jealousy that's involved. I don't think that's something that I would explore, but I feel like if women want to explore that and that's something they want to partake in, hey, why not? Obviously men are able to do it. Why not?
Mm-hmm. I think what's in,
if it didn't have to do
in the societies that have that, I think, it works because that's their custom, that's their, that's what they're used to. But, in this society,
that's why I say it would bring a lot of
millennials are getting into polyamory, though. I will say that. And I actually read a book that talked about how the idea of like open marriages is pretty much not a new concept, even in Western standards, because a lot of people have mistresses. Even women actually are catching up to men in terms of like cheating outside of their marriages and relationships. So like it's a
Not
question.
catching up to surpassing.
You know what? I'm going to retract my answer. Yes,
Surpassing.
go women. Have more than one husband. I'm going to retract my answer. I had to think
Girl
about
power.
some stuff for a second.
No. But
Yep,
also,
I'm sorry,
I
go
want to
women.
Hannibal's comment about
Agreed. I'm glad you did that because I wanted to bring that up too.
Yeah, like we need counseling. we need
Agreed.
counseling, and we need
Agreed.
established roles and rules, and no matter
100,
what
100,
yes.
100. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that a lot of relationships break down because there has not been expectations, right? Expectation. People haven't been honest in the beginning when they were getting married. They weren't honest about what they wanted. They weren't honest about their expectations, and they weren't honest about who they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then you end up with people getting married and not getting what they expected, or
I don't think people are honest with themselves going into a relationship. I think they have this misconception of what marriage is supposed to be because of other people, but then they realize that doesn't work for me, and then now they're changing it. And whereas they might have gone into the relationship one way, but now they've changed their mind, so now the relationship doesn't work.
Right.
And so that, that talks about the fly-by-night marriages. People just getting married because they met, they were interested, and they said, okay, well, let's do this. And some people use hadith to say, if you see somebody that you're interested in, then get married. But you're absolutely right. I know that among the imams that I've observed, they all have a process of counseling, pre-counseling, premarital, marital counseling. There's a lot of people trying to do workshops to, for singles, so that people can, better know what does marriage mean? What are your responsibilities, and and what to look for,
and what are your expectations?
Tons of questions that they.
And are you okay with polygyny?
Yeah.
And are you okay with polygyny? Are you a man that's thinking about polygyny? Are you a woman that's okay with that? I mean, I think that's a valid question.
Can that not change over time though?
On the
it
the
can.
contract from
yeah.
But if you get into a secret marriage, guess what? You in an entanglement.
I know a lot of women who are okay with
an entanglement. Yes. It's also that if your local masjid and imam don't offer counseling costs money. Mm-hmm. So not everybody can do that. But I think that one of the things that I'd like to leave off with is that when we do talk about our expectations, we need to, I think, as couples, work to our strengths as opposed to work to gender stereotypes, right? Yeah. Like you need to be the one who buys all the groceries because you're a woman, as opposed to the man in the relationship might be better at going through the house, figuring out what they need, going to the grocery store, getting what they need. Because and some women will go into the grocery store and walk out with some tea bags and some ramen, and that's it. You know what I'm saying?
But
everybody's working to their strengths, and part of that is like even going through strength assessment. What are we all good at? What are we all good at? What are we good at? How do we make this relationship work?
How do we benefit the relationship better?
Ooh, I have a solution before we wrap up real quick though.
Yes.
There's YouTube videos. I know that sounds cliche, but there's YouTube videos. Like there's plenty of counseling things that you guys can watch together that brings up.
Yes, there.
Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. I think that's one of them that me and my husband watched before, and that helped with a lot of stuff too.
There's also there's an imam in California called Yasser Fasara. I can never say his last name, and he does a really good series called Before You Say I Do. Fantastic series that everybody, I feel like everybody should watch that series before they get married. And that doesn't
mean Islamic books as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. If you don't have the money to afford counseling, these are excellent ideas, but I do think Muslims should be more open. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of Muslims are open to therapy and couples counseling, which can really strengthen our communities in general and ourselves. But I want to thank all of our guests. I want to thank my co-hosts. Thank you for this excellent talk. Next week, we will be talking about saving your children as parents in Muslim communities. So thank you so much. Peace out.
Assalamualaikum.
Comment, like, and share.
Have a great day.
Comment, like, and share, guys.
Comment, like, and share.
Comment, like, and share.
Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.
Glory is to you, O Allah, and praises to you. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship but you. I seek your forgiveness and repent to you. Amen.
Sorry, guys, we didn't do a backstory.
What's the backstory?
We failed on the backstory.
We are the backstory.
The whole show is the backstory.
The marriage was the
We're bringing
backstory.
everything out
The
the
whole
bag.
show was a bag. The whole show was a bag.
That's what we're in it anyway.
Ramadan Mubarak. Remember me in your
Ramadan
du'as,
Mubarak,
please.
yes. Last 10 days.
From our home to yours, this is The Bag.